All right, I'm going to be honest with you. This is like my third time doing this review. I just can't seem to make this review as good as the show, you know? All right, so of course I'm going to be reviewing season 2 of Stranger Things. It came out this Friday and it was epic and it was awesome. However, the first season I wasn't the biggest fan of. I loved it and I thought it was cool and interesting, but everyone was freaking out about it and everyone was considering it this pop culture phenomenon. Well, it was a pop culture phenomenon, and I just wasn't. I was like, what's the big deal? It seems cool, it seems interesting, but it's just a lot of 80s references and a cool story, which in fact is really what it is. But the second season really made me appreciate the whole story in itself a lot more, because when I watched the first season of Stranger Things and it ended with that trying to do that sequel thing, I was like, no, why are you doing this? The story seems good, but it doesn't seem good enough to have to make a sequel about it, to have to explore it even more, right? We kind of got all our answers, didn't we? Little did I know that the Duffer Brothers had something more planned. So I use this analogy in the episode where I reviewed it. Episode 33, in case you were wondering. I think I already said that, but I don't know. And I use this analogy of a curtain and like a stage. So you know when you're pulling back the curtain and you get to see the stage in a theater, it's kind of like that. Season 1 was just when you first were pulling that curtain open and you could just see a little bit of it. And however, when you watch season 1, you don't think, you think they're showing you the whole curtain. Not the whole curtain. You think they're showing you what's behind the curtain completely. But in hindsight, they're just showing you a little bit of it. And that's what a good sequel is. A good sequel expands on the first one in a way that it makes it more important, and it makes you realize how actually small the first one is compared to what it's showing you now. But that doesn't mean it's showing you everything, right? Because there's probably still going to make a season 3. So they're going to continue making that curtain more and more open, I think, because there's still a lot more to be explored. I mean, now that I can kind of trust the Duffer Brothers in a way that I totally get what they're doing and understand how awesome they're doing it and how good they are at telling a story like this. So yeah, I, of course, as you can tell, I really love season 2. I think I liked it. It's hard to say whether I liked it better than season 1, but I don't know. I don't think that's important right now. All that matters is that season 2 made me appreciate season 1 so much more in the best way possible, and it really got me into the fandom, because before I wasn't really that into it. I was kind of just dipping my toes, but with the second season, it's confirmed that I think it is something that's actually good. And so I just want to say, to begin with, yes, it's a sequel that's a success. I think it did what it didn't. It veered away from all the mistakes that sequels usually make, which is awesome, because normally a sequel in its first story, it tells you everything. But then when they try to make a sequel, they're like, no, wait, actually, there's more to the story somehow. They kind of try to like continue it, but it still just doesn't end up working as well, and that's why sequels are never as good. Yeah, and so of course the characters, you get to see them more, which is cool, and they did it in a way that the characters are always growing, and just like human beings always grow and always learn through life. The characters, they learn, they grow, which is good, because some sequels, of course, they had the characters, well, we saw their growth in the first movie, now we're just going to have them do more stuff, and then you kind of miss that growth. But the thing is, growth never stops in a person, I don't think, as long as they're living, as long as they're learning and doing different things. So, of course, they made the right decision there, I think, and we have all the characters, and we have different pairs, I guess, of characters that kind of don't seem like they would work, but they do, which is even cooler than matching up characters that like you'd think would work. So for instance, like Eleven and Chief Hopper kind of are buddies throughout the season, because Chief Hopper, ever since he lost his daughter, he's always been that like father figure type of person, and so Elle is kind of like the perfect person because she kind of doesn't have any parents, which is sad. But wait, she does, but she's a paralyzed person in a chair, which is kind of sad. And so, yeah, we have an episode. Well, there's an episode where she visits her mother, and that was a cool episode, by the way. I loved it, but now I'm just rambling. Ooh, I need to take a deep breath. Okay, so Elle and Chief Hopper, they kind of get paired up, and then Elle is dealing with this, she wants to reunite with Mike, and that's what this season leads up to in a way. And of course, we get that payoff, thank goodness, in the second to the last episode. But Chief Hopper is just trying to protect Elle, which makes sense. But in some sense, you could see he could be selfish because of his want for a daughter. Because he's, like I said, he's such a father figure that, he maybe is taking his time a little bit too much trying to figure out how he can fix Elle's issues with her having to always be in hiding. So there's that. And then there's Dustin and D'Artagnan with the freaky pet. It's like a, I mean, I kind of predicted that plot point. I think everyone could. But it was still a cool, little bit of the show, I guess. It didn't bother me too much that I could predict it. I still, D'Artagnan, of course, he starts out as this cute little thing, this small little thing, and turns out to be this huge demidog that eats his mom's cat, which was such a sad thing. Oh gosh, anyone who has pets probably felt really bad. I know I felt really bad. Anyways, and then there's Lucas and Max, and Dustin and Lucas kind of had this thing where they were trying to get Max into the group from the beginning, and you could see that. And then because I guess Lucas just ends up spending more time with Max, and that's why they end up kind of being more buddies by the end of it. Of course, a little bit more than buddies by the end of it. And so that's fun. And of course, having new characters in a story like this is tricky to do. Adding new characters in a sequel already, you'd think it'd be hard enough to just do the sequel in itself, but to add new characters is super risky. But they knew what they were doing, and they knew that to add a new character, they had Mike to be this skeptic, I guess, where he didn't want to replace 11. And I feel like without Mike not wanting Max to be in the group, even though it was just a jerk thing to do, and you kind of I was like, geez, Mike, come on, be more accepting, all right? She's not trying to replace 11. Actually, throughout the whole show, I was like, poor Max. I feel so bad for her. No one likes her. Because, 11 brushes her off when she, first comes back, I guess, in the gang. So that was sad. I felt bad for Max. But anyways, so Mike kind of plays this role as the audience in the situation, because I feel like if we had Max, this new girl character, to join the group, I feel like the audience would be like, hey, are you trying to replace 11? And have that concern, and maybe not like Max. So to have a character in the show feel that, that the people behind it understand that that's a problem, and they're going to try to avoid it by creating a character like that, to do that for you, I guess. And that's why I ended up really liking Max and as her character. And, you kind of feel bad for her, okay? But at least Lucas is a cool friend, and, Will is accepting of her, so that's cool. And then, yeah, of course, Will, who's once again the victim, which is poor Will, but I mean, someone's got to be the victim, even though he was already in season 1. I guess it makes sense because he was spitting out them slugs, and so he had this connection with the Upside Down, and that worked to continue the story and expand it because we got to see oh my word, it's the Mind Flarer or something like that. Yeah. And so that led to that big part of it, which, like I said, was the point where you pull back the curtain and just a little bit more, and you realize that there's more to the story than what just season 1 was, which is how it should be, I guess, if you're going to do a sequel. And then there's Jonathan and Nancy, and they're doing their thing with Barb. Well, technically it starts out with Steve and Nancy at Barb's house with her parents, and that was an interesting scene. It was kind of sweet, but kind of sad. And so yeah, to think Nancy, of course, is having to recover from Barb's death, and so that's an interesting aspect of it because they continue with that, which is good. They can't just leave Barb's death, of course there's going to be references back to that, and of course Nancy's still going to be going through things, and because her friend died, and the parents don't even know. That must be so torturous. I mean, these are all the feelings we're probably going through as we're watching it, and I know thankfully Barb gets her justice in some way, I guess, in some sense, because they use the help of, who's the other new character? He was the best. He was having breakfast with them, and it was so funny. He was so good. When he dropped that egg, oops, he was hilarious. He was awesome. Anyways, so all the new characters were great. All the still characters were great. The still characters, I call them the still characters, okay? The characters that were there before. And great. Great is just a way to express this whole show, obviously. And then, so I wanted to talk about this other thing. Not this other thing. I wanted to talk about, so continue talking about this thing that Mike had against Max. And that was kind of like a reflection of maybe what the audience would have. And I think they do a great job of doing that throughout the whole show, even the first season and the second season. It's almost like the characters in the show are the audience, I think. And that's how any good story should be, really, where the characters are the audience to the things that are going on around them, and the audience is literally watching the audience. And by that having that effect, it allows for the real audience to know how to react, know how to feel when we see what the characters are reacting to and feeling towards. So whenever there's a reference happening and one of the characters calls out the reference, the audience knows that it's a reference, even if they may not get the reference. So opposed to how a lot of TV shows and movies do it nowadays, where there's just this reference and the audience is just supposed to get it, I guess. Even, like you don't really see that the characters get it, and which isn't like as good as the way that Stranger Things does it, where the characters get it. And so you learn to appreciate it because the characters appreciate it, whether you even know what the reference is or not. And if you know it, it's a bonus, but it isn't like, wouldn't ruin it or make you not get it, I guess. So that's what I'm trying to say. And then finally, I want to talk about the last part, which was Elle's episode. And it was probably a filler episode. I think the only filler episode. I have to say, I know that they were trying to give Elle more screen time, I guess. And sure, it was a huge part of her growth as a character. But it still wasn't, it wasn't like, I think it wasn't as of it. It was trying to give you that cheap fulfill, I think. Either was trying to maybe secretly set up something for the third season, but it just ended up being a filler episode, I think. And I know they teased to it in the beginning where they had 8 and she showed her power, and that was cool. But I was expecting they were going to do something more integrated, like integrate her into the plot a little bit more. 8, I'm talking about. But they didn't end up going there, so you know that she's probably going to have something to do with season 3, which is a little bit more obvious, which isn't as subtle, and I like subtlety, and so it just, yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that episode. I mean, I think it was still a good episode, but it was a filler episode, and it was kind of boring, so yeah, and even though we did learn a lot about Elle, I understand that, but, and I think I missed a character, actually. Wait, so, okay, oh, yes, so there's Bob. Bob, of course, how can I forget Bob? Bob is, I couldn't tell whether he was a jerk or whether he was just a really, really nice, ignorant person. So he just turned out to be a really, really nice, ignorant person. And like all people that are really, really nice and ignorant in sci-fi stories or whatever this genre this is in, they die. So Bob died, and that was sad. That was really, really sad. But I saw it coming. You probably saw it coming. He was like, I'm safe. And he just stares at Joyce because, of course, they're in love, which is cool. And it was a cool aspect to explore through Joyce's character, having someone that was actually really nice and cool. And he died because a demodog ate him. And that was really sad. That was a brutal scene, too. Like, that blood. Ooh, that was not good. And Billy, finally, who's a stepbrother of Max. And I thought that was cool how they did that, their relationship, because in the beginning of the movie, gosh, it's like a movie, but it's just really long, I guess. Actually, no, that's something I noticed really quick. This is all just a really big mumble. I hope you are not dead. It's weird because every episode kind of ends in a cliffhanger, but it ends in a way that you could clip them all together and they would just be a really, really long movie. Like, literally, that's how it would be. I imagine, like, is someone going to do that? I feel like someone would do that. Stranger Things, the movie, and you just take out all the intro, and it's literally just cuts of throughout, and it's just a 9-hour movie. That would be funny. Anyway, so back to, wait, what was I talking about? Oh, I was talking about Billy. So Max and Billy, they were interesting. Poor Max, she was poor Max. I just said poor Max throughout the whole second season, because Billy was brutal and he was weird. And I thought one thing I liked that they did was how they didn't make it obvious that they were step brother and sister. They kind of let you wonder about that throughout the show, and then I think it was halfway or a little bit later, they said something that clearly means, oh wait, they are step whatever. They explain it, and that's cool because they don't just like give it away, even though it isn't that big a big a deal or an integral part of the plot. It's just that little thing that I appreciated. Yeah, and that's it. That's everything. I hope you enjoyed my mumbling, rambling episode, and I hope it wasn't too crazy because I've recorded this so many times and I can't do it again. I just can't. So I hope you liked it, and please let me know your thoughts down below, whether you liked it, whether you liked the second season, whether you didn't like it. I'm really curious, especially if you didn't like it, why you didn't like it, because I loved it. And so yeah, thank you for listening once again, and you can find us, I'll just put it in the description, it's on iTunes, and we're on Twitter at the Gosh Daniel Pod, and thanks for the last time for listening, and I hope you have a great time living.